The release of new Pokemon Snap has been met with mostly positive reception, but I can't help but to wonder how many of these review scores are boosted by the Pokemon brand as well as nostalgia for the original game. If you stripped away these two factors, would people really be enjoying this game as much as they claim to be now? I'm not so sure they would, which maybe isn't an earth-shattering revelation, but if true, it suggests that maybe new Pokemon Snap really isn't all that praiseworthy. And if you couldn't tell by that opening statement, I don't have much of an affinity for this new version of Pokemon Snap, and I can't say that I really enjoyed my time with it. This is a case where I feel it's important to acknowledge that I didn't play 1999's Pokemon Snap, so I don't have any nostalgia influencing my thoughts. But what I do have is a love for the franchise, yet not even that affinity for Pokemon was enough to boost my enjoyment of this title. New Pokemon Snap, which I'll just be referring to as Pokemon Snap from here on out, has one overarching issue: unavoidable repetition. As we will come to see, the game does make attempts to break from the monotony, which is appreciated, but none of those attempts are enough to allow the player to escape the sensation that they're just doing the same thing over and over again with very little opportunity for experimentation, expression, or even input. This problem is baked right into the genre's DNA, but it's one that Pokemon Snap really doesn't have a good solution for. Instead, it throws a bunch of weak ideas at the player and hopes that together they will be enough to maintain enjoyment and engagement. In my opinion though, it just doesn't work out. If this game didn't have the Pokemon license carrying it, and instead used everyday animals of Earth, it would probably flop and leave many players bored to tears. The core gameplay loop gets very stale very quickly, and this boredom makes it hard to overlook other issues plaguing the experience, particularly within its story and presentation. The overarching narrative is focused on a mystery, but it's hardly ever expanded on and lacks interesting characters that might be able to elevate it. The writing is also a low point and leaves you feeling like you're 4 years old again as a teacher reads a book to you during story time. And on top of that, a few moments outside of the photo treks reveals presentational hiccups and missteps that come off as sloppy. I'm not quite sure how the gameplay repetition could have been fixed, and some folks are going to argue that it doesn't need fixed, but there's no denying that the story and the presentation of this game could have used more time in development. Before proceeding further, I think it's also important for me to acknowledge that I don't think I'm the target demographic for this game. Everything is presented in a way that indicates this is a game for younger children or families to enjoy together. Maybe that further explains why this juvenile experience really didn't click with me. But now that you know I didn't really like this game, let me explain to you in detail why that is. From here on out, the video will contain footage from later sections of the game, as well as discussion on plot points and the reveal of the game's quote-unquote bosses. So you've been warned. But with that, welcome to my critique of Pokemon Snap. Despite the simple premise, Pokemon Snap has a lot of gameplay elements to examine, so let's start with the biggest, which of course is the photography. Let's start by establishing what exactly the gameplay is. You have one job: collect as many high-quality photos of Pokemon as possible in order to fill out your photo decks. You'll complete this assignment by traversing different predetermined routes across the Lental region, with each journey lasting about 5 minutes. Despite not being able to go off the linear path, you'll have full range control on the camera, meaning you can get pictures at all angles. Snapping a photo is done with the click of a button, and as you progress, you'll unlock new courses, new Pokemon, and accompanying behaviors, as well as new power-ups to create more cinematic moments. Much of the progression is about creating variety within the gameplay, given the unavoidable repetition of what you do in this game. The game just doesn't do enough to alleviate the player of this boredom, as what's on offer here doesn't shake things up enough on each subsequent run. The only time I really enjoyed this game was when I unlocked a new course and got to see it for the first time. And to give the game credit where credit is due, these first runs were very enjoyable, as it was exhilarating to see which Pokemon would be featured on the map and how they would behave. Seeing them was a surprise, but that's a sensation that's hard to replicate afterwards since you now know what to expect. Each run afterwards feels like repeated content, despite the game's efforts to convince me that it wasn't. Perhaps this feeling could have been avoided if the game wasn't on rails, but then again, it would have been much harder to guarantee photogenic moments for the player to capture if that's the route they would have taken. Because of the failure to escape tedious repetition, my overall take on Pokemon Snap is that it's boring, which is subjective, but I'd like to spend some time explaining why I feel this way using the objective reality of the game. In order to do this, let's take a look at all the ways the game tries to ease the repetition and evaluate each on how successful or unsuccessful they were. If we were to list these attempts out, they would look something like this. The game uses new maps, including day and night variants, new routes within each map, new Pokemon behavior, and new power-ups in order to ease the repetition. And so the first way I mentioned would be the introduction of new maps for the player to trek through. At the start, you'll only have one map to explore, but you'll quickly unlock a nighttime version of this map, as well as an Illumina Pokemon and a jungle map. For the longest time though, it felt like I was stuck in these few maps, and was begging the game to open up with more biomes to photograph. In reality, it was only a few hours, but going through the Florio Nature Park and the Funja Jungle 5 times each before unlocking 2 new maps felt longer than necessary. It felt like the game was scared of overwhelming me with too many maps at once. I would have preferred every map to be available at the start, but this isn't the case since the game insists on telling a boring story, but we'll get to that later. Instead, the game slowly unlocks each new map, some with day and nighttime versions. The problem is that you're rarely told directly how to unlock each subsequent map. Usually it means ranking up a previous map to a higher level, but you can't be sure which it is without looking it up online. So you might spend time grinding the newest map, expecting it to eventually unlock a new one, but maybe that isn't the case. They don't always go in order, meaning you might trek through the same course over and over again without any new results. This design choice meant that I was only ever excited when unlocking a new map, and everything else felt like I was blindly grinding out previous courses, just searching for how to unlock the next. This feeling persisted until I looked up a guide on how to unlock each map. So the second reason. Some maps have multiple routes within them, which is commendable. Finding a new route may lead to the discovery of some new Pokemon that you haven't encountered yet. The problem with this attempt, though, is that many of these alternate paths are discovered in somewhat nebulous ways. Now some, like the one on the beach, are pretty straightforward. This one's unlocked from the start, and is used to introduce the idea that some courses will have multiple pathways. It's signaling to the player that each course might have some secrets to uncover. Many of the ones after this are hard to decipher on your own, such as this one in the underwater caverns. After a few runs, a Clawitzer will spawn here. Keen players might remember one of their earlier scans saying something about how a path existed behind some boulders, but there was no way to move them. What you're meant to do is to shoot this Pokemon with an Illumina Orb in order to get it to shoot the boulders and unlock the routes. It's not a stretch to expect the player to do this, but it made me question so many other spots I had scanned on other maps. I'd go back to see if there was a Pokemon there who could unlock a new route for me, only to come up empty-handed. The game wasn't clear enough on what it wanted me to do in order to access the new pathways, or even if an alternate route even existed in the first place. And repeating courses over and over again to search for them felt tedious, boring, and ultimately frustrating if I didn't find anything of value. Third reason now, we have the behavioral differences that Pokemon display as you repeat courses. This idea is perhaps the only one that really works well in the game's favor, because it does alleviate a little bit of the repetition and doesn't contain any glaring issues. When you go through a course for the first time, the Pokemon are noticeably bashful and opt to face or run away from you since you are an outsider to this turf. However, with each subsequent run, the Pokemon get more comfortable with your presence, which culminates in them putting their full range of behaviors on display for you to work your photo magic on. This leads to both an intrinsic and extrinsic reward, as you begin to feel more accepted within each course, like when an animal begins to show affection towards you after being initially shy. But these new behaviors also create better photo ops and allow you to replace bad pictures with higher rated ones. So again, you're getting both an intrinsic and extrinsic reward. It feels good to see these new behaviors, and at the same time, you're getting better ratings on your photos. When you first go through a course, it's fun just to see the new Pokemon and to grab photos of them, even if the pictures aren't that worthwhile. And because of this behavior progression, those crappy photos can be eventually replaced, which can be rewarding in its own right. Moving on, and I've saved the worst for last. The game's final attempt to quell the monotony of repeating courses over and over again comes in the form of its power-ups. As you play, you'll unlock a scanning feature, a music box, and 2 throwable items, Fluff Fruit and Illumina Orbs. You'll also get a feature that allows you to increase the speed of your vehicle on expeditions, which is a godsend. Outside of this one, I'd assert that these power-ups are inconsistent at best and useless at worst. The scanning feature rarely gives you any information of value. Instead, it just offers some flavor text describing things in the environment. I guess they are used to discover some alternate routes, but receiving them feels so arbitrary. I mentioned the Clawitzer one a bit ago, but there's also times where I would unlock a new route without ever knowing why. I think I perhaps scanned something in the environment, but I'm not really sure what happened. My example here would be in the cave ecosystem, where at one point I just veered off in another direction because I don't know what happened. The game just decided I'm going this way this time, so now that's what's going on. Okay, sorry for the tangent there, but I rarely felt like this scanner offered up anything of value. The Fluff Fruit you can throw is pretty innocent. It allows you to lure Pokemon to various locations, and snapping a photo of them eating is almost always guaranteed to give you at least a 2-star rating on your photo. The same also goes for if you hit them in the head with it and get their reaction on camera, which is a nice touch, given that the throwing system is far from ideal. You aim in the same way you move the camera, which results in a blind firing a lot of the time. Each throw of the Fluff Fruit, as well as the Illumina Orbs, feels like a shot in the dark. Seriously, you might need to send up a prayer along with the fruit if you want to hit your mark consistently. The Illumina Orbs are just as frustrating to throw, but they also come with the extra perk of doing nothing most of the time. You unlock these after photographing an illuminated crystal bloom on each island, and they can be thrown at Pokemon to light them up, and occasionally create different behaviors. The key word there is occasionally, as I can't tell you how many times I threw one of these suckers either to have it miss, or connect and do nothing. It was annoying to aim for a target, fire blindly a couple of times just to figure out the necessary trajectory, only for a successful shot to yield no reward. At some point, I stopped using these orbs because they rarely ever did anything in my experience. And don't even get me started on the game's finale, where you have to shoot 6 flowers with these orbs in quick succession in order to unlock the final map. It was so stupid. I can't imagine why this game decided to hide its final map behind this throwing mechanic that sucks. The Illumina orbs were particularly frustrating because of how little they seemed to work, along with how annoying they were to aim. The music box only has one of these problems. You won't have to throw it, but I can only remember one instance over the span of 12 hours with the game in which it actually did something. It's meant to wake up sleeping Pokemon and trigger a new behavior in them. I used it on so many sleeping Pokemon only to see no result, which made me feel like it was a waste of my time. And that's a feeling that carried over to the entire experience. So, for me at least, 3 of these 4 gameplay elements failed to eliminate the boredom of subsequent runs. The first time through each map provided a lot of surprise and intrigue that following attempts could never live up to. I would have much rather seen this story done away with completely, and the player be given every map from the start, except maybe the final one. That one could have been unlocked after completing every course at least once and capturing all the Illumina Pokemon. I would also make the alternative routes a little bit more transparent using the scanner tool, so that the player knows how to unlock them instead of it feeling random. And the tools you're given need a buff, as far too often, many of them failed to do anything, which only created more frustration while making me less likely to use them. With the way things are now, my experience with Pokemon Snap boiled down to 1 or 2 good hours and 8 to 10 hours of being quite bored. So that covers my thoughts on the bulk of the gameplay, but there's of course the matter of sorting out your coveted collection of photos. After each trek, the player meets with Professor Mirror and is allowed to submit 1 picture for evaluation for each Pokemon or environmental detail that they captured. You can sit through each evaluation if you want, but you can also speed things up, which is appreciated. The streamlining of this process allows you to get back into safaris faster, which is the game's bread and butter. However, let's dial things back a bit and put the game's photo evaluation system up for, well, evaluation. Every photo you submit first receives a rank based on the behavior that the Pokemon is displaying, and then it receives scores based on the following factors: size, direction, placement, other Pokemon, and background. These scores will yield either a bronze, silver, gold, or platinum rating. This leads to 2 types of overall scores on each picture. You can have anywhere from a 1 to 4-star photo that's scored between bronze and platinum. For the most part, this system works as intended, but there are enough times where photo evaluation seems off, as if the computer AI that determines the rank and score is just that, a computer AI. You'll have pictures that you swear look so good receive lower marks and ranks than ones that look off. For example, I'd point you to my collection of Yanmega photos. This photo received a 1-star rating, and this one received 2 stars. They look pretty good, right? Yeah, I think so too. Now, take a look at my 3-star rated photo for Yanmega. What is this? I don't even see the Pokemon in the picture, yet the game determined that within the confines of this image, there's a Yanmega displaying a behavior worth 3 stars. I had too many moments throughout the game like this to not address it in this critique. The rank system is fine about 80 to 90% of the time, but there are enough moments like this that leave you feeling like the game is bugged. Perhaps this is inevitable given the lack of a human eye studying each photo, but these oddities happen far too frequently to let them roll off the shoulder. But the rank system isn't alone in having issues, as elements of the scoring system aren't explained well enough to the player. Categories like size, direction, and placement are pretty straightforward and work as expected. You want your subject to appear big in the picture, you want it facing you, and you want it to be centered. These characteristics result in an aesthetically pleasing picture. In other words, these are all basic elements of photography that anyone can understand. However, the categories of other Pokemon, and especially background, left me befuddled a few times while playing. You get points for having more Pokemon in your shot, but it was never clear to me exactly what this meant. Did it mean just having more Pokemon in the shot, or did it mean capturing moments where Pokemon interacted with one another? I could never be sure. But by far, the subject of background is what confused me the most. There were many times where I didn't score a single point for this subject, despite thinking that the shots I had captured had pretty decent backgrounds. I mean, take a look at these photos from my first nighttime exploration. I feel like many of these shots contain decent backgrounds, like the mountains behind Bouffalant or the stars illuminating Pidgeot. But no, I only got background points for this photo of Bidoof, and I couldn't tell you why. It seems so random if I would receive points for this category or not, and even after playing the game for 12 hours, I couldn't tell you if a photo I took at this very moment would get me background points or not, because the system was all over the place. So overall, I'd say that the photo evaluation system should receive a passing grade, as it functioned well enough most of the time. But I couldn't call it anything better than passing, as both the ranking system and the scoring system contained enough moments that left me scratching my head. It's to be expected from having a computer algorithm scanning your picture, but it happened too frequently to call this anything other than just alright. At various points throughout this video, I refer to quote-unquote boss encounters when discussing Pokemon Snap. This term might not really be the most applicable, but it's the one I'm going with to describe the game's Illumina Pokemon. These are beefed up Pokemon who accentuate the Lentinal region's Illumina phenomenon the most. They are bigger than other Pokemon and shine with a brilliant aura, particularly when you hit them with Illumina orbs. These Pokemon each get their own map, however, other Pokemon can sometimes be spotted in them. They also tend to fare the best during photo evaluations, since they are the pride and joy of this region. They are meant to be memorable encounters, and the brilliant introductions they receive do end up going a long way in creating an epic feeling. With that being said, let me explain why I'm using the term boss encounter for these shiny Pokemon. You're tasked with capturing each Pokemon while its Illumina effect is in full swing, and most of the time, this means having to hit it with a set number of Illumina orbs. Unlike other levels where you merely snap photos of Pokemon at your leisure and then move on, you're tasked here with an additional hurdle to get the perfect shot. This extra step requires much more skill than anything else in the game, because you have to wrestle with the controls in order to land your Illumina orb shots. In fact, it ended up being very frustrating a handful of times. Volcarona is protected by a flame tornado, and you'll have to knock it down before your Illumina orbs can connect and make the Pokemon radiate. On my first attempt, I didn't know this was a requirement, so I just kept taking pictures of it, only to find I had failed because I didn't capture it in its glowy form. The surprise and joy of seeing this Pokemon for the first time was stripped away when I found my trek had ended in failure without me even realizing why. A similar situation took place with Steelix. This time I knew I had to capture its Illumina form, but it moves so damn fast, and the Illumina Orb launcher, like I mentioned, is a pain to control. Again, I felt like I was firing blindly and just hoping shots would land. If the control setup and the feel of the controls is off in your game, the player is going to feel scorned, because not only do they have to overcome the challenges of the game, but they also have to fight tooth and nail with the controller. And that's why I use the term boss encounter, because it genuinely felt like these were tests of my skill, or at least my patience, given how annoying it was to control. These sections also went on a bit too long for my taste. The other maps are home to so many different Pokemon that 4 to 5 minute expeditions feel appropriate. But with these, I can only take so many pictures of a Meganium before it starts to feel stale. Luckily, you can leave an expedition early and still get your photographs evaluated, which is a nice touch. Still, these encounters were meant to be the highlight of the title. It was supposed to be the pinnacle of the gameplay. And to me, the additional layer of challenge they introduced got in the way of taking memorable photographs. If the Illumina orbs were easier to launch, it would have been fine. But with the way it is now, I never felt like revisiting these locations after securing the necessary photos to progress the story. One of the most disappointing elements of Pokemon Snap is the dreary photo editing mode. In a game all about photography, it's stunning that your ability to edit photos is so limited, as there's hardly any options to customize your photos drastically. Every photo you take can be saved to a gallery where it can be edited and given its own caption before uploading it for the world to see using Nintendo Online. You can add a border, filters, and stickers to each photo, but most of these additions simply make the photos goofier instead of more professional. I understand that Nintendo's console pales in comparison to Sony's and Microsoft's in terms of power, but it baffles me that games like Ghost of Tsushima, a title that has nothing to do with photography, has a better photo mode and editing options than Pokemon Snap. This is another reason why I feel the intended age demographic on Pokemon Snap is that of a child, because what we're given here is so bare bones. It feels like there isn't any way to clean up a photo and make it look really nice, but instead there's just a handful of stickers to make things much sillier. I would have liked to be given the tools to take things in any direction I want, but that sadly just isn't the case. Now, I hardly ever use photo modes in games, so it doesn't bother me all that much. But I have to imagine with how popular this franchise is, that some people out there are going to be disappointed with the lack of variety and tools offered here to alter their prized photos. The filters are what's going to change up your photos the most, and each of them can be adjusted between 0 and 10. However, the extremes of these ranges often leave your photos ruined, such as with oversaturating them. I'm not even sure why some of these more manipulative options were included when no one outside of trolls will ever use them. Moving on, the stickers are fine, but again, they just make your photos sillier. I mean, look at this photograph. Every time I do, it makes me laugh. I'm so sorry. And finally, the borders are exactly what they sound like. A border. It doesn't change anything about your photograph. Outside of the filters, there really isn't much here to touch up your photos, and I think that reflects poorly on a game all about photography. And to wrap this section up, we have a bit of a nitpick. The sliders for filters are annoying to control because of the speed at which the cursor moves. I'm only bringing this up because the rest of the game's menu system is actually pretty well done and rather intuitive. Navigating the photo decks in particular feels very smooth and easy to handle, but these filter sliders stick out like a sore thumb. And before we move on to the story, we have one more small element of the gameplay to address: the side content. That's right, Pokemon Snap offers up some side quests where you have to capture photos that correspond to what NPCs ask of you. For example, one request might ask you to find out who burnt some apples in the Florio Nature Park. Another one might ask you to capture a motherly photo of un pheasant. These are meant to be little tasks that you can complete at your leisure, but the problem here is, again, tedium. there's no guarantee to when you're going to find and capture the moment that corresponds with the side quest. In other words, the moment you're tasked with photographing may only occur at random or when a map is leveled up to a certain level. There's no guarantee as to when this will happen, so if you're focused on completing a certain side task, you might be forced to slog through a map over and over again with no indication of how to get the solution to spawn. And don't forget, each run is 5 minutes, and you can't stop yourself from moving. So if the moment passes you by, too bad, try again. It's content that begs you to look up the solution online, and to me, that's the mark of weak design. Once I realized how these were structured, I had no interest in trying to solve most of them. If I happened upon the solution to some of them out of chance, so be it. They seem like a feature that only the most hardcore fans of this game will appreciate. Some of these gameplay shortcomings could have perhaps been overlooked if the title's story and presentation were able to lift up the experience, but unfortunately, that's not the case. I'm going to be spoiling the entire game's story here, but you really aren't missing much if you continue on without having played the game. Pokemon Snap is a title where the gameplay is meant to dominate, and the little bit of story that is offered is mostly there to set up the different Safari maps. The events of the game kick off with you selecting one of a few generic trainer models to play as, and meeting up with Professor Mirror and his assistant, Rita. These are arguably the most forgettable Pokemon characters ever introduced. It took every brain cell I have to remember the professor's name while writing this script, and before fact-checking myself, I referred to Rita as Luna throughout this script. That's perhaps an anecdotal way of pushing the idea that the characters are forgettable, but I challenge you to play the game for yourself, and try to remember their names a few days after finishing things up. Later on, another kid named Phil joins your expedition and acts like a rival. The key word there is acts because there's no gameplay interactions where he competes against you. It would have spiced things up a bit if, periodically, Phil challenged you to take better photographs than him. You can make the player have to outscore his photo during the photo evaluations, which would have made him feel more like a rival instead of just another person spewing baby dialogue at you. And of course, Todd shows up in this game, which, really, who cares? It's Todd. I mean, at least he's recognizable, but that's about all he has going on. These two characters show up a few hours into your journey, and they don't contribute anything of value. You could cut them from the story, and nothing would have been lost. And to be quite honest, you could cut all the characters from this game and not lessen the experience. In fact, it might have expedited photoshoot journeys for the betterment of the game. These 4 characters exist only to offer up the request I talked about earlier and to provide the least valuable flavor text in any game I've ever played. They are each written so stereotypically and so boringly, and none of their designs can compete with some of the more eccentric character models that we've gotten from the series over the years. There's nothing distinct about them, which is fine. Maybe it just means that Pokemon Snap's story isn't character-driven, which means it's plot-driven. Which is true. It is. The problem is that the plot sucks too. There's an air of mystery surrounding Lental, the new archipelago region you travel to in Pokemon Snap. The story begins with you aiding Mirror in photographing the Pokemon of the region, but quickly opens up a bit more, as the professor reveals Lental's famous Illumina phenomenon. On this set of islands, some Pokemon glow at night due to the crystal bloom plants that can be found all over the place. This region-specific oddity is said to be the most visible within the Illumina Pokemon, and like I talked about earlier, these are legends of Lental's past. They're Pokemon that have grown massive and give off a stunning aura at night. The only known record of these Pokemon comes from a man named Captain Vince, who created a travelogue of the region 100 years ago. In his travels, he managed to snag some very blurry photos of what he believed to be these Illumina Pokemon, Now, Mirror wants you to help in finding these Pokemon to study them and learn more about the region's past and the influence that they had on it. Over the course of the adventure, you'll find 5 Illumina Pokemon, all of whom guarded one of the 5 islands making up Lental. I've already shown these off earlier, so I won't bang on about them here. By the game's end, you'll have discovered a very old cave mural showing off the 5 Illumina Pokemon and how they were able to stop an incoming meteor from destroying the region. Originally, the professor theorized that the meteor's impact is what created the Illumina phenomenon. But no, these Pokemon just always existed, and they used the power of being shiny to stop a meteor from devastating the lands. You might be wondering how they did this. Well, they created a shield around the region using reasons unknown, which is stupid. It's never explained. And the game presents this like it's some massive discovery that the Illumina Pokemon have always been here in Lental. But really, who cares? It's like the question, which came first, the chicken or the egg? The meteor or the Illumina Pokemon? We find an answer to that here, but does it really matter? Does it make for an interesting story? No, it's just a mystery's resolution that has been spread way too thin across the course of a 12-hour game. But hold on folks, because we're not done yet. The professor is able to uncover one final expedition location called the Runes of Remembrance. Towards the conclusion of this photo section, you'll come across a cavern with some ancient technology. Lighting up the 6 crystal blooms in this area grants the player access to a hidden secret, which you might remember me whining about earlier. You'll enter a cave where the king of the Illumina Pokemon resides. This was the only part of the story that contained any intrigue. There was one Pokemon who was in charge of the region, one Illumina Pokemon to rule them all. I was fascinated with which Pokemon they'd go with, and I was hopeful that maybe they made a new creature exclusive to this game. After all, what kind of new region doesn't contain any new Pokemon? But no, it's just Xerneas. Why the hell is it Xerneas? It feels so random and arbitrary, like they just picked a random legendary from a hat and it's from another region and they just plunked it down here and they called it a day. I much would have rathered it been a non-legendary Pokemon. That would have at least made more sense given there's an abundance of them throughout the Pokelands. In other words, if the king of the Illumina Pokemon is Absol, for example, that makes sense. There's tons of Absols across all the regions. But there's only one Xerneas, and its home is in Kalos, not Lental. Is this supposed to be like its summer vacation home? Well, that can't be it either, because it's literally a tree. When you first find Xerneas, it's a tree, and it turns back into one after your expedition. Rita and Mirror hypothesized that saving the region from destruction sapped all of this Pokemon's energy, and so it took a new form and rested for the last couple thousand years. It all feels like something a child would make up in their imagination, not professional writers trying to incorporate a story into a game. Whew. So, it might seem like I'm making a big deal over nothing. Just take the stupid photos of this gorgeous legendary and move on with your life, you might be saying. And yeah, you're probably right. But the truth of the matter to me is that Lental feels like such an afterthought of a region, considering it doesn't offer up any new Pokemon to uncover. It feels like a copy and paste job where a hodgepodge of Pokemon from days past have been plunked down into a set of generic biomes. This sensation comes to a spearhead in the game's final moments with the reveal of Xerneas. It drives home the feeling of a manufactured ecosystem that extends across the region, despite it being home to over 200 species of Pokemon. Lental never feels like its own distinct place because of this, and in a series where each region has a personality of its own, that's a major, major disappointment. After this expedition, with the mystery solved, you return to the research camp for one final scene where the professor ponders why Xerneas revealed itself to you. The other three characters act all smug and berate the man for not saying the obvious truth. And I kind of felt insulted too, since I had no clue what the hell they were getting at. And yeah, that didn't earn the game any extra brownie points. They paused for dramatic effect before revealing that Xerneas revealed itself to you because Pokemon can tell when someone really loves them. I can't tell you how close I was to spitting up in my mouth a little bit when I heard this. It wouldn't be a Pokemon game if the protagonist wasn't shoehorned into this perfect kid with a Heart of Gold archetype that every Pokemon game drowns its hero in. With that, the credits roll, and the main story of Pokemon Snap is complete. It's a lifeless mystery that could have been made into so much more, but it never reaches for anything better than below average. When it comes to presentation, I see many folks praising Pokemon Snap, as they offer direct comparisons to the graphics of Pokemon Sword and Shield. It's easy to look at the two games and realize that Pokemon Snap looks much better than that of the maligned Generation 8 games, but it's an unfair point of comparison. Pokemon Snap is an on-rails game designed solely for photo-taking purposes, meaning everything has to look great and remain uniform in its style to ensure that players' photos look as good as possible. Sword and Shield are about catching and battling Pokemon, not taking pictures of them, and so the graphical difference makes sense. Now, I'm not defending the look of Sword and Shield here. I think they have a lot of ugly sections, but it's unfair to loft up Pokemon Snap in comparison to them because the overall purpose of the two games is much different. With that being said, a lot of attention and detail has gone into the course design here. While many of the biomes you traverse do feel kind of generic, they at least make for pretty backdrops to capture photos in, although don't expect any background points for it. The environments are densely packed as to not show any of its cracks. They are believable, and they contain many additional features to support that believability. For example, you'll find whirlpools in the reef, sand twisters and an oasis in the deserts, and plenty of leafy overgrowth throughout the jungle. The selection of Pokemon you find within each map also make a lot of sense. Nearly every Pokemon I saw felt like it was right at home in the biome I was currently venturing through, save for a few exceptions, such as Kangaskhan being in the desert or Drifblim being on the beach. It feels like a lot of care and thought went into picking which Pokemon should appear in each map, and that's good. Pokemon are also very well animated, and the extra polish put into it results in maps that feel brimming with life. Seeing how Pokemon's behaviors changed as they became more familiar with you was also fascinating. It provided a little bit of extra variety and differentiated each run a tad bit. Not enough for my taste, but at least they tried. The music is also well done, as many different instruments were used throughout the OST to reflect whatever biome was being portrayed. For examples, there's bells akin to those you'd hear in Christmas songs accompanying the snowy ice fields, and the sounds of the sitar humming through the desert landscape. Considering how many different instruments and sounds were needed to reflect the different biomes, I'd say they did a really good job with the music. While I won't really remember any of these pieces, I can at least acknowledge how well they fit in thematically with the scenes that were being portrayed. So for the most part, everything within the gameplay sections shined. They looked and sounded great. The only real pause for concern was some textures not loading in a timely manner, but these instances were far and few between. Unfortunately though, much of this love and care didn't carry over to the other sections of the game, such as being in the research hall, outside the lab, or the brief cutscenes. There's an undeniable sloppiness that creeps into your awareness as you sit through a couple of these scenes. These snippets where characters tell you the plot are particularly big offenders. They can only display 2 characters at a time, which is weird on its own right, and so when one needs to be replaced, they get Thanos out of existence before another one flies in off screen to take its place. Literally, they zip into the scene, and it looks so dumb. You'll also see character models clip into themselves from time to time. These hiccups happen throughout the entire game, and I noticed it every single time and couldn't help but to think about how bad it looked. These scenes aren't voiced either, which incorporates a lifeless feel to them. Maybe they skimped out to save room on the gigabyte requirement, but it's to the game's detriment. And then there's the cutscenes. I can't believe they even bothered to spend time and resources implementing these when they add so little to the game. None of them last for more than a few seconds and contain some of the only spoken dialogue in the game. You'll see your character being welcomed to the research camp or being given their camera, and then they're just over. I guess it's rather inoffensive, but it just makes me wonder why they weren't made into anything more spectacular. They're just too short. But by far, the biggest thing that irked me about this game's presentation was the writing, which seemed to be pulled straight from a children's storybook. I alluded to this at the beginning of the video and throughout it, but I'm not sure what the intended demographic for this game really is. I think it has to be for children. Maybe it's not for me, a 20-something-year-old who grew up with the franchise. But the writing does ensure that people under the age of 10 will probably feel right at home. The best way to describe it would be that it feels the same way as watching a kid's show as an adult feels. The writing used such basic vocabulary, and characters react in overly emotional ways. They get surprised at obvious truths, angry over your superior photography skills, and ecstatic over exemplary photos. And when they aren't overreacting emotionally, they just say the most bog-standard things imaginable, like, quote, "I can't believe it was your first time out there. Keep up the good work." End quote. It just all feels so hollow, fake, lifeless, and perhaps worst of all, generic, which just drags down every one of the four main characters that you interact with. And to make matters worse, the writing is also very repetitive throughout the game. In particular, you'll hear Professor Mirror comment repeatedly about how a photo shoot revealed new information that he'll share with you after you get your photos squared away, or how your discovery of a fully lit crystal bloom has unlocked new Illumina orbs for you to use. You'll see some of the same lines verbatim multiple times throughout the game, and it just contributes to the stale atmosphere permeating throughout everything not found in the photo expeditions. There's a Jekyll and Hyde element to the presentation of Pokemon Snap, as many of the safari moments are presented with rich beauty, but much of the time spent outside of them are marred with graphical hiccups and childish writing. For as much complaining as I've done throughout this video, I can't call Pokemon Snap an outright bad game, because it really isn't. I know I've been pretty harsh at points throughout this critique, but maybe I'm just missing the point, as I must acknowledge that many of these points are subjective to my taste in games. This isn't a title that's meant to have unlimited replayability, and it'll just end up being a short and sweet experience for most players. For many people, simply getting a chance to see their favorite Pokemon up close and personal and how they interact with one another will be enough. They will be able to accept the developers' efforts to introduce variety in the gameplay, they will overlook the bare-bones story and minimalistic writing, and the presentational snafus, and they'll just enjoy the game for what it is. However, I think the only people that will be able to accomplish this are those that are immense fans of the series, who pretty much eat up anything that relates to it. I mean, I can't even say that people with a passion for photography will enjoy this game, because of how limited photo editing is. I'm glad people are playing and enjoying Pokemon Snap, but for me, I regret purchasing this game for $60, and I think it's grossly overpriced. It feels more like a $30 to $40 experience, and that's me cutting some slack to the development team and Nintendo. If you can get it for a bargain, maybe check this one out. As for me, I'll stick to catching and battling Pokemon, not taking photos of them. Hey, thanks for watching my critique of Pokemon Snap. As you can tell, I didn't like this game, and I wanted to make clear why that is in this critique. Hopefully, I've raised some fair criticism against the game. If you want to see some more of my thoughts on the state of the Pokemon franchise, you can check out my 3.5 hour critique of Pokemon Sword, as well as a pair of hour-long videos looking at each DLC for the latest generation of games. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing for more, follow me on Twitter at NopNapNarp, and as always, have a nice day and take care.